Hello and welcome back to My Time with Lynn, episode 13. It's been a bit, but hopefully the time is worth the wait because we have a very special guest, my old good friend, Oyang Teng. Hi, Oyang.
Hey, Spencer.
How's it going?
Been a while. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, I usually like to start my guests with a discussion of how did you come across the movement and how were you drawn to it and how did you join?
Yes, right. I have thought about this a lot. And so it started in 2002. There were protests against the Iraq War. I was in college, working for the paper, covering some events, saw that there were anti-war protests happening, started to go to meetings of the anti-war groups on campus, went to a protest in San Francisco and came across a book table. Um, and I think I was primed for it because I had a friend at a different college who had on our private like friend chat had mentioned that he had come across this economist, this figure, LaRouche, had seemed interesting. And I didn't really clock it at the time, but when I saw the table, I was like, I recognize that name. I'm going to see what these guys are about. I only found out later when I went back to that chat after I had already joined that the next day he had posted essentially a warning saying, don't get involved. Um,
Whatever you do.
yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, like, came up and immediately was struck by how different the message was, right? Because it was sort of like, well, we're against the war, but we're not like all these people.
Sure.
And the literature was of another order. So like talking about potential relative population density, that there's no limits to growth, that it's dependent on technology and cultural development. And so like the frame of the discussion was just something different.
Hmm.
And so I was just a very square contact in the sense that I like signed up, took literature, and then just read the literature and called the office and asked when the next meeting was. So
Hmm.
ended up going in San Leandro, and that kind of kicked everything off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, similar, I think I was more like 2003, but I remember the anti-war movement just not being that they're against the war and they're out marching with slogans, but they didn't really have any plan beyond they didn't want the war. They had like 1,000 smaller plans for like their own issues, like in my view at least. And so the LaRouche movement struck me as, oh, they have some plan. They have an alternative, which makes a lot more sense about like development and development's the name of peace, and they want to
Right.
develop the economy, and like they had a plan, and no one
Yeah.
else did. That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it was appealing, yeah.
The thing that stands out from my first meeting, other than just like the romance of this crowded, like office in San Leandro stacked with literature, like, junkyard on both sides outside, kind of like industrial street,
Yep.
industrial chic, revolutionary vibe, was the map of the land bridge. And
Hmm.
in the meeting, it was a discussion of potential relative population density and, the difference between the population density of Germany versus someplace, say, in like Western Africa.
Sure.
And so just sort of like starting to get a sense of like the gravity of those concepts, like um, it was something that I just kind of kept pursuing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point about like the literature, I also read the literature, and I found it to be pretty impressive in the fact that it was like just way more serious than anything else going on. It's like, okay, these like I don't get a lot of it. I get some of it. So I was in college, so like,
Yeah.
and I wasn't dumb. I was decently read for someone of our age at that time. So I got some of it, but it just struck me like this is more serious. These people are more serious about this stuff because the young
Yes.
people can tell me a lot more about these ideas than anyone else can, you know.
Yes. And they're also willing to talk shit about everyone else.
Sure, like they have a
So that was
strong
like
view.
not, yeah, that was
Yeah.
um part of the appeal. I also, yeah, it's not, I also remember being specifically attracted to LaRouche's formulations because one of the pamphlets I read was I think it was the State of the Union from 2002. So
Okay.
the November program, which was this orange pamphlet, just very detailed like infrastructural plan.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was both. It was like not just sort of the abstract ideas, but embodied like in somebody who was, you know, making strong and compelling, intriguing statements about everything.
Hmm.
So yeah, there and touching with, getting a sense of like from the other organizers, like, okay, this is you want to know what these people know was also, I think, a feeling
Hmm.
at the time.
Sure.
And yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember a little front and back leaflet, just a two-page thing. I think it was called George the Second or Richard the Third. It had those names in it, and it was comparing George Bush Jr. to like Richard the Third as a leader,
Yeah.
but also not on Bush, more on Cheney. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is a kind of a deep analogy, historical cut that I just,
Mhm.
you're not expecting to have that. And then, of course, the Children of Satan. That was like right around when I was coming around, and this was like, okay,
Right.
what beyond you get beyond the shock value and you read the history of Wolfowitz and Leo Strauss, and like, all right, I never heard about any of this. And you look into it, like, all right, I guess this is actually kind of true. And all right, that's a weird, I didn't expect that from this, ad hominem cover.
Right.
So it's a weird mix, but
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that was the time, right, that we both joined was like the Iraq War.
sure.
And at the time that seemed, I mean, existential.
Hmm.
1920, 9/11 had sort of shocked me out of my whatever worldview I carried into that.
Sure.
Uh, the response to that was shocking. So, you started to feel like you didn't understand the world.
Hmm.
So it was scary, like at a level where you're just trying to make sense of stuff, and attach your identity to some like worldview. You've
Hmm.
developed a real strong worldview. Um, but I think the timing had a lot to do with it. The first week that I spent organizing spring break was the week that the war broke out in March 2003.
Sure.
Um, so the strength of our opposition to that as a movement on, in the strongest terms, like this is dark age type uh stuff,
Hmm.
caught me at a point where I thought this is important enough to like drop everything.
Sure.
So
Similar. Yeah. I think it's hard maybe for younger generations to know what it felt like for that shift, that the 9/11 shift and into the wars. Like I think our generation really felt it somewhat acutely. I remember in that time, March 2003, when the war was launched, I had these two gal friends, just like from hometown, and they chose to just stay at home watching the news and just drinking and crying. And
okay.
I remember thinking, like, all right, well, like I don't know how much it's going to help anything. Like,
Yeah.
it's your way of dealing with it because it's just, and not to judge them, just a little bit of humorous, but that was just like such an emotional period, um, that yeah, some of us found this group or we found different kinds of things to channel our energy because it's I have the same thing. I'm like, well, what am I doing? I'm doing nothing. Like I'm kind of going to college, working at a pizza shop. I could be doing something more. Could be something doing something more because I see the problems with this policy, And
Mm.
like honestly, for myself, 25 years later, I still think those policies were not good. Like they were a failed policy and
Yeah.
they were a mistake and I'm glad that I fought against them. At least I tried, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm. It seems to be the consensus now, right? That was what
sure. Yeah.
others said at the time.
The post hoc analysis. Yeah.
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 Uh,
Okay. So you were in the Bay Area and you eventually started like living there full time, working full time organizer kind of thing. Probably like a
yeah.
few months or so.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, some months of being a contact, being a close contact, being in that zone of being like, it's a sort of privileged zone where you're like the close contact, but they're
Hmm.
not a full member, so everybody's like trying to get you, trying to recruit you, and you're, sometime doing that and like in school, and then yeah, about 8 months really until I decided to like withdraw from the university, and I withdrew for a year, and but never went back.
Hmm.
So started organizing full time in Oakland. And at the time, it was, it was the younger, scrappier brother of the West Coast limb, which
Mm.
was sort of, in my mind, the constellation was LA,
Sure.
center, the nerve center of the youth movement, at least on the West Coast, and then Seattle, and then like Oakland.
Sure. Yeah. And I think we were the three of us, because I obviously worked in Seattle for most of it. I spent a little bit of time in Oakland and a decent amount of time in LA, but always seemed like we had a deep connection, and the East Coast is like this other thing over there. Like in those
Hmm.
in those early days, like yeah, whatever, we're never gonna meet them, those people. Who
Yeah.
care?
For
Like
me,
maybe
they were the
see,
people on TV when we went to the conferences there
yeah,
protect them.
yeah,
Yeah.
given the classes and everything. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Nice. And then let's see. I'm kind of skipping it. Then you were on the recall, I think. I think that's so. I should
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for our audience. Just a fun little fact. Oyang was one of the first people that I met in the movement. At least from not the Seattle office, because I was visiting a family member down in the Bay Area, and then I was
Hmm.
like, we were going on the BART, and someone was coming out of the BART with like a leaflet, and like I recognized the leaflet, like, oh, where'd you get that? And they're like, oh, some kids are passing out up at the top of the escalator. So like I left my family like, hey, catch up to me. Like I sprinted up to talk to you guys, and
Yep.
it was Ricky and you. I was like, oh my God, like you guys are
Yeah.
doing
That
this.
was
It's
the
so
same time when
cool.
you were wearing like the Kangol cap and I think I remember, yeah, I think I remember that.
That's funny. Yeah, yeah, maybe yeah. But I definitely remember you guys. Of course, we met after that. Like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, you're the guys I met.
Yeah.
But it was
No, that
funny.
was no, actually I do remember that because yeah, you were it was sort of an in the wild meeting with another person who knew the movement
Yeah,
in Seattle.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's fun. So then, did you go down to LA at all, or mostly just Bay Area for a while?
Yeah, so let's see. So 2003, so it's Iraq War stuff, like if I just go through the reel in my mind, it's like Iraq War,
Recall was summer of '03 too.
Recall, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Hmm.
Recall was big. Yeah, so Recall ended up, I'm sure we went to LA at some point.
Sure.
Um, that was huge. Like that was so much energy.
It was.
There was the massive letdown of now it's blurring my head. We lost the recall first and then the election, right? Oh 04.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so the recall was like, yeah, the first time where we were flexing so hard and it felt like we were taking over the party and
It
things were
did.
happening, and then it didn't go through, and that was just like that was a serious blow. Uh,
Hmm. At the same time, it was like this. It highlighted to me at least the goal. Like we're building this thing. Like we're building
mhm.
this thing. Like the more we build it, the more power we're going to have to be able to affect those things. Because like the Democratic Party just had no clue. Like and we were going to these conventions in California, and like they had no clue what
Yeah,
they were doing. And we're the only young people that are passionate about it. So I do remember feeling that blow, like, oh, well, that sucks, like, Arnie got in or whatever. But at the same time, it was like we're building this thing, and we're just starting.
right. Yeah, this is the movement that shut down the Cal Dems at the state convention by singing "Oh Freedom"
Yeah, yeah,
just
that's right.
in the middle of the proceedings, which I was witnessing as a student at the time, but like
Hmm.
covering the event and thinking like, um, yeah, these kids aren't messing around. Like, yeah.
Sure.
So that was, yeah, I mean, that was kind of really peak
Peak.
early, not the earliest, but like a lot of just energy.
Yeah,
Um,
just so much, but you feel the potential. You go into that
yeah,
LA office, and it's just like all these young people. They're just like filled to the brim with these young people talking
yeah,
about profound ideas and trying to do outreach. And it was like this such an energy for sure.
yeah. Uh, So yeah, so that's yeah, and I think a lot of our energy at the time was both like external and also like, hey, let's rapidly grow. I mean, this is where we were like thinking about singing Jesu on the lawn of the White House, right?
Sure. Hmm.
Singing Bach on the lawn of the White House. It was like
Hmm.
that kind of fever pitch.
Hmm.
Give me 10,000 youth and I'll take over the country. And
Sure.
I remember I was in LA when LaRouche said that, and I and Freddie and some others were like, "Well, we're just gonna load up," and we went out like it was 10 o'clock at night or whatever. We're just like through pitch literature in the cars and just start going out. We're like 10,000, we're gonna start now,
Yeah. Right.
count it down. Um,
let's get 10 tonight, and then we'll just
yeah,
get, we'll just go.
it's just numbers.
Yeah, and the same, yeah. And the idea of like that we could take over the institutions like in a positive way, like take over the university systems, take over like government things, like to give them a better idea of what they should be doing. And like that was like
Mm,
it was such a potential for sure.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so that you know, that sort of set the tone. I mean, by that point, right, like I was fully in, there was no question of going back to school.
Hmm.
Um, and it obviously felt for most of the time that I was in, that most people, it always felt like you were on the cusp of some big breakthrough. And
Sure.
anything that happened externally would just be a signal for people to say, "Oh, I remember they were talking about that." And so that no amount of resistance really, I mean, most of that slid off our back, right? Even though it was a blow to lose these campaigns that you convinced yourself you were going to win. But there was always the assumption that whenever things got bad enough, people would remember who had told them that, and they would come in droves. So
Sure. Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think and I remember certain circumstances where that did indeed happen, just like that. Like, oh, I remember like you get an old contact who like calls you up after a couple of years, like, oh, weren't you guys talking about this thing? Like, yeah, and then like they might come into a meeting or something because they just, like
Hmm.
we were the only people telling them the truth, and they're like everyone, all the rest of society is like, no, everything's fine, or like, no, it's not. So
Hmm.
kind of funny for that way. That
Yeah.
gets me to a question from our old friend George, and you sort of answered it, but what is or was the most interesting part of Lynn's policies that attracted you?
Mars colonization, moon Mars colonization, I think was probably that was the thing that dovetailed already with what I like my fantasies of
Mm-hmm.
uh, future human development and maybe what I would try to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was my first class was on the space program.
Mm-hmm.
It was my first weird art project for one of the Schiller conferences was building a Mars as this because LaRouche wrote an article on city building on Mars, and
Mm-hmm.
it's called back to Renaissance principles and spirals and trams, and you design the city to have, reduce the mean free pathway of action in the city, and
Mm-hmm.
have to be aware of sight lines and uh, all of that stuff. And so that just sort of hit me, uh, you know, at a place where I was like, well, no one else is touching this. Like this isn't a comment on what anybody else is talking about.
Sure.
And it was, yeah, I mean, it was later, you know, as we developed those ideas in the basement and other places, like I think the fact that as a presidential campaign, they had taken out a prime time spot for the woman on Mars in '88
Sure.
thing, and just to essentially have a whole pitch about this prospect and try to envision it.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I'd say that was sort of the secret sauce of um, using the imagination in politics. Like
Mm-hmm.
try to actually envision it. And out of that, like I've since then find myself talking to people about lunar industrialization because like this is an idea that I think has merit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah,
Sure. It's infectious, I think too. Yeah. I think I remember that city you built. And I also remember someone had built the paper mache Nawapa
yeah,
big thing in LA. They'd
yeah,
always bring that to conferences. And to me, those are both just such future oriented policies. I'm like, this is great. Like we should do let's build this. Let's get on this right now. And I
yeah.
think you were like the main producer of the German Space Pioneers film. Isn't that right? Or you're
Actually,
a big
that was
part of it.
yeah, yeah. That was actually like Diana and Allie that did
Oh,
that.
okay.
But it was overlapped with the extraterrestrial imperative like
Hmm.
series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it was a great film and it's underrated. People kind
yeah.
of forgot about it, but it was like just so very inspiring.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean for things that hit the space nerd in me before uh I even joined the movement, like that kind of touched off a lot of things.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It took me a minute because oddly enough, I hadn't joined yet, but I was familiar with the group and I was on this date in Seattle and this old guy, we're like walking around this walking path. This old guy on a bench who to this day I don't know who this person was. But he's like, "Hey, do you got a moment?" And like, "Yeah, I got a moment, sure." Like, I'm with this girl, and he's hands me this leaflet, and he's like, this. He wrote his own leaflet about why you should vote for LaRouche, and I'm like, "All right." And like, it had this thing on space colonization, and then I came back to, you might remember my boss, at that pizza shop, Ken. He's the one who kind of recruited me, and I was like, "Yeah, like I like his ideas, but I'm not into this space thing. Like, it's just a waste of money, you know." But then
Hmm.
like a few months later, I'm like, "No, this is the most brilliant policy we could have. Well, of course we have to do this, you know." And
Hmm.
for our viewers that don't know, Oyang was mentioning in the 80s, we took this full like 30-minute ad on national television about the woman on Mars, about how like the first one on Mars, and just very futuristic concept. And it was like for a presidential campaign, like that was his policy. I think it was 88, I want to say.
Yeah.
But it was like, who does that? Like it just seems so impractical, but it's also such a brilliant future-facing idea.
Yeah, it was sort of the idea of using a science driver to spearhead a cultural renaissance. So
Hmm.
it's like um I mean partly I guess you could argue that those that's like a big enough idea that it's almost um it's hard to it, you could say it was impractical, and
Hmm.
so because it's at such an overarching level that it's a little bit slippery.
Hmm.
We spent a fair amount of time, like previous to us, the members who had like done this in work in the 80s, and then us later spent a fair amount of time trying to elaborate this. We did some amount of historical research based off of what other members like Marsha and stuff had done, like trying
Hmm.
to understand Apollo as a science driver.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, it brought together. I mean, it was also an umbrella where you could bring together, basically any of the core concepts and see it through the prism of um, human development in space and science drivers and focused beam technologies and things.
Hmm.
So it felt coherent,
Hmm.
and it was yeah, and it was sort of, I guess what I mean, like it was sort of above the fray of the normal uh yeah, the typical terms of political debate.
Yeah,
So yeah.
for sure. Agreed. Yeah. And then let's see, I don't know, you came up to Seattle, was it '05?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, so this is yeah, when I saw you doing this, starting this series of interviews,
Mhm.
uh I realized, like, hey, this is the 20th anniversary of our trip out to Eastern Washington.
Yes.
Um, and you actually have some interesting connections to that
Hmm.
that weren't even apparent at the time.
Right.
So yeah, to maybe just set the stage for that, came up to Seattle in '05 just for an extended stay. It was my first time in that local,
Hmm.
and it was, and in the course while I was there, we had a chance, the four of us, right? So it's you, me,
Hmm.
Dave, and Wes,
Hmm.
um, ended up taking a road trip out to Eastern Washington
Yes.
to try to stop the shutdown of the Fast Flux Test Facility, the FFTF, which was
Hmm.
a nuclear, like a DOE nuclear research facility using fast neutrons to
Hmm.
uh,
Create radioisotopes,
create
among other
radio.
things. Like they use different of the cells to test different things. It was mostly like
Right,
a research reactor, but also
right,
produced the bulk of the nuclear radioisotopes in the U.S. at the
right.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is like a very specific campaign. It's like
Hmm.
specific and limited, but it was like we're gonna go out there and try to stop for whatever reason, they were gonna mothball it, right? And we
Sure.
were, oh, this is an essential research capability of the US. Let's make this a campaign.
Hmm.
And so it ended up being a 2 week road trip out in the cuts in Washington and
Hmm.
trying to rally people um, around our flag.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it was, I mean, I could be wrong, but my memory is that it came about as a result of people like Marcia, who was sort of running the 21st Century Science and Technology magazine, like our scientific sort of branch at the time. And then some contacts we had in the Tri-Cities who were like maybe making us aware that this was happening. Because
Hmm.
one of them was the guy who he had that company um, to do the thing with food to irradiate food irradiation. And
Hmm.
so he relied on the products of this reactor to do that, I think.
Hmm.
And then just other contacts we had who were just into Lynn's ideas, who were keyed in the Tri-Cities. And so like it somehow came up on our radar. And then
Right.
I like got to slip in because my friend I know we could stay with my friends in Washington State, and I'd been pushing for a long time, like, hey guys, we're all in Western Washington, but like, and I grew up on both sides of the state, so I'm like, there's great people out in the east, and we're like, they have no clue we're out here, right? They
Mhm.
just so like, let's go at least make contact with them, and so that's sort of how, at least that part of it, how it came about,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
we spent 1 week at Washington State University. I think we popped over to Idaho University, which is hilarious because my brother coaches there now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a small world. And then we spent that last week in Tri-Cities, I think,
Hmm.
explicitly trying to save the reactor.
Yeah. 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 Yes. So we were the spear point of a bunch of legwork that yeah, Marsha, Marge, Hecht, and others had done, and this crew out there, and that's yeah, that's the first thing that I really remember was we showed up at your old friend's house on campus, and we like come in and there's like 4 or 5 guys like drinking. It was a party that we walked into,
Yeah,
and just the four of us, sort of like not behind enemy lines, but just out in the wild.
sure.
Um, in the middle of this like sort of frat scene,
Yes.
uh, and that was interesting. That
Hmm.
was yeah,
Very sitcom level, like two worlds colliding
yeah.
a little bit. And
There was this undertone of like, "Hey, Spencer," but also like, "Hey, Spencer, like, what are you up to?"
yeah,
Just sort of like watching from the sidelines, like, who are these guys?
I
They're
know.
not like on our side, but they're letting us crash there, is sort of the feeling.
Yeah, they had plenty of couches and like, sure, you're welcome to come over and stay
They
for a
just
little
didn't
bit.
really care, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it was funny. And I remember I was excited to go on the campus because of what I mentioned about organizing the people there.
Hmm.
And I wish I could remember the slogan we used. It was something about venereal disease and the economy. And I can't
Sure.
remember, but because someone had told us the fact that like at the time, I think like a third or 40% of the sororities members had VD. I'm like, oh, that's terrible, but like let's make a joke about it. And we thought it was going to be a little risque. But then one of the first people that came up was like the vice president of the sorority of like the whole sorority system. And
Okay.
she started like, oh, hey, Susie, come over. You got to talk to these people. They're hilarious. And she just
Okay.
became she just became like a little magnet for us. And I remember we got invited to talk to the group of like graduate students. Remember that
That's
dinner?
right.
Hmm.
That's right.
It was
Yeah.
like history and philosophy. I think it was history and philosophy grad students had a little
Yes.
dinner, and they're like they just were intrigued by us, so they brought us out. And I remember we
Yes.
talked about Jefferson and Hamilton
Okay.
and Kant and Leibniz.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just like we had a pretty diverse set of experiences with different parts of that campus
That's
at the
amazing.
time.
Yeah, I hadn't remembered that till you mentioned it. And it
Mhm.
felt like such a win at the time because it was like, oh, these PhD students want to engage with us on an
on,
intellectual level.
on the
And
level
it
of
was that
ideas.
thing that sort of split feeling of like um, both you're sort of not up to you're a little bit worried that you can't really hang.
Sure.
And on the other hand, you're maintaining both to yourself and to others, like the facade that you know more than them,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
we're going to show what your philosophy degree is worth. But I remember that being just a really good discussion. Like
Hmm.
it was what you want a crew of four to be doing when they're out on some distant campuses, just make contact with the people who want to talk about philosophy and have them invite you over.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah. No, very, very true about the feeling like you're inadequate, but also like just trying to engage them honestly. But then sometimes we would do the thing and like, a lot of people guilty of it, like just trying to find the hypocrisy and they're like trying to shut them down or find the chink in their armor.
Mm,
But I don't remember feeling that at that. I remember feeling it like, oh, this is a nice like meeting of quasi peers,
yeah.
a nice like discussion. And don't think it like led to anything, quote unquote, but it still was
Right.
like a good experience to have that
Yeah.
discussion on that level. Yeah.
I, I remember the sort of overarching motif of that trip was, yeah, here's these crunchies coming from over the hills in Seattle into
Hmm.
East Washington. It's a whole other ball game. And and we were sort of adopting this position of like, yeah, we know that you guys think they're crazy, but we're not crazy like the
Yeah.
people you think we are.
Yeah.
But it was like very strongly centered on the American system, Lincoln Democrats, or FDR Republicans, Lincoln Republicans, FDR Democrats, like sort of saying, hey,
Sure.
there's this false dichotomy. All of our contacts on the ground, from what I remember, the pro-nuclear guys who were hosting us, taking us out to taco and beer and all that,
Hmm.
they were Republicans,
Yep.
but they were what at the time we called, like, I don't know, classical Republicans or
Sure.
just regular
Lincoln. Yeah.
Lincoln
Yeah.
Republicans.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was like a strong like rallying cry. Like, there's something that subsumes these two different strains, and it's
Hmm.
American system, it's investment in infrastructure, it's national banking,
Hmm.
and sort of trying to put the FFTF fight in that context. Um,
Yeah. It was very appealing because I mean it's gotten way worse now, I think, with the polarization, but even back then it was like I don't remember a lot of the rest of society trying to find these commonalities or these like shared goals, like nuclear power. I mean, like the Democrats were more opposed to it, but like
mm,
economic development was more, or like infrastructure development or the land bridge or NWAPA, they were more things that anyone could get behind. I'm like, yeah, I'm for that. I don't care about parties, but like I like that thing. Let's
mm.
do that thing. Or yeah. So that was neat to see that sort of
Yeah.
difference. And I was yeah, I always wanted the organizers that just knew Western Washington to see like, no, there's a whole different whole different side of the state.
Hmm.
That it's yeah, it's smaller, but it's still important. But
Yeah, we ended up, they put us in touch with some advocates. I remember there was one woman who was one of the like national advocates for I think cancer patients, who was
oh
sort of,
yeah.
and this was the we should be promoting the medical isotope part of this, and she was
Hmm.
she was brainstorming about networks we could get in touch with, and that was an interesting discussion because then she started getting into organ energy.
That's right. I remember that.
Like
Yeah,
this
yeah. I
this
remember that.
wild. Yeah.
And she had the whole
Um,
thing about how we should be contacting our representatives.
yeah,
Like a
but
phone
yeah, no, no, go ahead.
like a phone call's worth 1 point and like an email's worth two
Okay.
points and like a fax, like she really wanted us to be faxing them because in her
Yeah,
mind that was really important. But yeah,
right.
I forgot about the Oregon thing and I remember this
But
person
I
now. Yeah.
remember thinking at the time, like, I probably didn't have the terminology quite, but I think we had created a safe space for her to bring out her special ideas because, you
Sure.
know, we were talking to her about nuclear and whatever, we're Democrats for nuclear and this stuff, but as was our want, like we went through the whole full spectrum, right? So I'm sure Renaissance, human creativity, all of this. So get to the core concepts, and that was, I think, her response to that was what inside of her was like the um, kind of core motivating thing, and it was
Sure.
like, they might be interested in this, and yeah, I mean, I might still be if I might need to look into it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I like that. I like the way you're framing that. That's a nice way to think about it. Yeah, that we were people. I mean, a lot of our ideas were so out there for. So like you get these people like her who like they're kind of on the outside too. And like, all
Hmm.
right, well, these people maybe they don't share exactly, but they at least don't care about the common crowd and the common view. So I can share with them things that maybe are a little more controversial or a little bit out there. And
Hmm.
they're not going to judge me, you know. I'm sure we had plenty of judgment, but yeah,
Yeah.
in general that works too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
What's-
just thinking back to my friends, I think at one point one of my friends threw a chair threw like a recliner at somebody, and
Yes.
you or Dave to
It was
like
getting rowdy.
it was getting rowdy, yeah, because
Yeah.
they're deep into the night and yeah, they're just I don't know, want to make a show of it, and that's just they're party guys, so it
Yeah.
was funny. And I think you guys went to stay with the neighbor or a couple
Yes.
like two of you guys, and then he had a late night tryst
Right.
with the gal. Like you
I
guys go over
remember.
there to like get some sleep, and then
Yeah.
it's you
Oh,
sleeps in it.
both we were scandalized on all sides. Those guys were like, who are these squares who don't want to party and want to talk about Leibniz? And, standing our ground. Like, I think to some degree we were like, whether we said it, we were giving off like this is degenerate,
Sure,
dark age stuff. Like,
sure,
you guys should be dealing with our ideas. And they
sure.
were like, how about I throw a chair at you?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And then we went to Idaho University for one day. I remember that be,
Moscow,
in
man.
Moscow, Idaho. Yeah, because the memory I have is several people saying, "Well, don't you know this is considered the least political campus in the United States?"
Okay.
And I
You're
remember
like
thinking
challenge
like,
accepted.
yeah, but I remember thinking like almost everyone had that like it was a well-earned reputation. Like they
Yeah,
really didn't care.
really didn't care.
Yeah, they're like, we're just here to study.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I know. We were so charged up and we were going into these places where it was like, what are you so excited about, man?
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
it was so neat. I got the chance to go with Michael and Rachel to South Dakota for a couple weeks in
mhm,
2004, and we're like some of the only people to ever. It was like the first contact with these little small towns. See, there's an excitement of like they have no clue who we are, so you just like it's very initial contact. And I remember feeling something similar in that tour with us. It's like these
mhm,
people have never met us, and we're this like the second biggest university in the state. It's
right.
pretty neat to go to. So.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, before, I don't know if you have any more thoughts or memories from the the Washington State or the Idaho part, but this funny story I wanted to relay. Uh, for the viewers who've seen my episode with Jessica, she put up this challenge of like, what's the craziest thing that a LaRouche ever told you? And I wanted to share this for the time I spoke about this story because it's just funny and it's relevant. But I had a girlfriend at the time in our Seattle office, and we're gone for a week at Washington State.
Mhm.
And I get this call from one of the people who's leading our Seattle office, and the phone call is like, Spencer, what's wrong with your girlfriend? I'm like, I don't know, like, because I don't, I maybe had I probably had a cell phone, but I don't like, wasn't like today, right? You're not as in frequent touch because it's 2005.
Mhm.
I'm sure it was not a smartphone. I know that at least. He's like, "What's wrong with your girlfriend?" Like, I don't know. Like, is something wrong with her? Like, I haven't talked to her in a couple days. She's like, "Yeah, she's really blocked, and she's freaking out, and no one knows what to do." I'm like, "All right, well, like, what's going on? Like, did something happen?" He's like, "No, it's like, look, man, like, you need to just get on her. Like, she's your girlfriend. You're the guy in the relationship, and you need to just, whatever it was, like, not crack the whip, but something like that." I'm like, all right, like I'll call her, but I don't know like what like it can't be because of me. Like I knew that wasn't because I've been gone for a few days. Like she's a strong person, she's a smart person. It's nothing like that. And at the end, it's just it went on for a while. He's like, yeah, just relationships, and this is kind of like to the point about relationships in the movement of like relationships are only tolerated if you're making the other person better. There's a classes of relationships, some that are approved. If you're both good organizers, then that's like you're on the approved list. But if one of them is not, then like either they improve or it's not approved.
Mhm.
That's kind of the subtext, or at least my experience. So he went on for a while about, yeah, you need to figure it out and you need to be like harder on her or whatever. And I was so confused. Like I just don't get what could have happened. And at the end, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, her best friend did just tragically and suddenly die, but like she should figure it out.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Like it was totally buried. Oh, okay, well,
Wow.
I was unaware that her best friend suddenly and tragically died. So,
Did
okay.
you heard about this on the trip?
I heard about this on the trip
Oh, damn. Okay.
from one of the leaders of the office, not from her, because she
Mm-hmm.
was disconsolate.
Right.
And so one of this gal friend of mine from high school was going like I made a couple calls to people in the area because I don't want to leave the group. But my friend Misha was driving home that weekend, and she's like, "Well, you can come with me, and then I'm coming back on Sunday night." I'm like, "Okay, cool, let's do that." So I left for a couple of days to go see her, just to
Okay.
like, yeah, just to see like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
I think you got organized, and then I think you guys did like a reading day on Sunday or something.
Okay.
So yeah, I was gone for those 2 days, and like lucked out because a friend, and she was in Tacoma, but she just drove me up to Seattle, whatever. And yeah, so it was like but to me, that was in my head, that's one of the funniest and like wildest things I've heard someone say. Well, yeah, I mean, her best friend did tragically and suddenly die, but she should
Right.
figure it out. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, that's what
Wow.
a callous view, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
The context is everything there, right? It's
Hmm.
like um we I think that's if there's one thing that explicitly changed for me after um the movement, it was the idea that, individual relationships can and should be sacrificed for uh the mission.
Sure.
Um and uh so and you always it's easy to justify as like, well, there's something higher, and it's ultimately for the benefit of all.
Hmm.
But uh and also we were 19, 20, 21, whatever. So
Sure.
your
Easy to
your brain is
romanticize and
still coming to get still getting its shit together. So
sure.
but yeah, this ability to sort of pass over individual pain in the moment, people's experience, like um that uh yeah, that that hit us all, I'm sure, in
Sure.
different ways. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. But then, yeah, that's just a funny kind of interlude because that second week we went down to Tri-Cities for
Right.
the
So that's where Hanford was. That's where the
hmm
reactor was. That's where the DOE was.
hmm
Um, yeah, and I think yeah. So we were organizing for a town hall.
hmm
Um,
That's right. So we had some contacts there, just over the years, and they sort of had a little network. They were like all kind of connected in different ways. Like they all
mhm,
knew who each other were, and we had support among the people that worked at Hanford, like,
mhm.
but not explicitly because they're always like worried about their job and such, but like they would secretly support us kind of thing. Um, yeah, and I forget where we stayed, but we stayed with one of them, I think. Um, maybe we stayed with Rob. I think we
Okay.
stayed with Rob,
Okay.
right? He's an old supporter.
Yeah, I just remember on the first leg of the trip staying with a contact who it turned out didn't like us very much, but was letting us stay with him. We like discovered, wait, this guy doesn't actually believe in the mission, but somehow somebody on the phone team convinced him to let us stay with him.
That's
But
funny.
yeah. Okay, so no, yeah, but this was this crew of pro-nuclear Republicans who we were.
Hmm. And I think so. This is Bush's second term. It's this experimental reactor, and we knew that it was going to cost more to shut down this reactor than it would have to continue operating it for the lifetime of its useful life cycle, right? We knew that it
Right.
was like at the time one of the most advanced. I mean, when the time they created it, was one of the most advanced nuclear reactors, and that it still was this whole thing about nuclear radioisotopes, which for our viewers, like chemotherapy is like the brute force sort of crude way to kill cancer. You just kill all the cells until, and you could probably speak more to this better now, but then radioisotopes are, you could target cancer cells and kill them specifically in a way that much better preserved your cellular health and you didn't have to get ultra sick and such.
Yeah.
So we suspected, I think we suspected at the time that if we were to shut that down, we would have to import everything from France. And it's hard with radioisotopes because they have such a short half-life. You have to like really time the
Right.
surgeries and procedures well.
Mm.
And so it just to us, it seemed like such a crazy thing to do. Plus, it was also we're very pro-nuclear, so we don't want to shut down any nuclear power plants, kind of as a de facto policy.
Yeah.
And so that was, yeah, getting these um, nuclear Republicans and like where these Democrats from the west part of the state out there to rally this thing. And we were getting some good like sort of movement. There was like people were excited that there's some sort of fight happening around it, because they like a lot of our fights, we're just sort of catalyzing a lot of latent support. People wanted to fight for it because it's a part of their community. So I
Mhm.
remember feeling that kind of vibe from it. Like people are like happy that these young people are here to fight for the reactor. It's almost like a old Disney movie or something, like from that Save the Mill
Right.
or something.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean that's the citizen army we were trying to build, right? It's
Mhm.
like I remember being, I thought Wes did a really good job of hammering this home, and really trying to play up this and make vivid this American system concept.
Mhm.
So use this specific fight as a lens to see that broader thing, and uh, and it's sort of like I remember the town hall was a little we didn't get that many people. It was a sort of anticlimax as far as getting that army together, but
Sure.
um, for whatever reason, we did make contact either through Marge or others, or through the stuff we were doing on the ground or whatever. We ended up making contact with the top DOE guy overseeing the site, right?
Right. Right.
And so we thought, okay, well, this is where we're going to put our eggs. Like this is the
Sure.
last line. Like this is
Yep.
the guy who's going
Yeah.
to turn the key. Um, and so we managed to get him. I don't remember if we had any discussions leading up, but we managed to get a meeting with him
Right.
at
Wendy's.
a Wendy's.
Yep.
Okay, so
Wendy's.
we're sitting down in the Wendy's, and it's a Hail Mary, right? It's
It
like
is.
we got to throw it all at this guy.
Yeah.
As I recall, it's probably mostly Wes doing most of the talking, and so we're sitting
Yes.
there just like eating our fries and stuff, and it's just like boring in on his soul. So it's obviously like this is the fight that means not just that we keep this facility open. This is what the United States needs right now because of this tradition going back 500 years of the anti-oligarchical renaissance developing into a fight that's going to
Mhm.
determine the future of civilization. Guys, like impassive, not letting anything, like very curt, right? Sort
Yep.
of just um, you know,
Flat, flat.
flat, right?
Hmm.
Like, well, his essential position was, well, I am sympathetic. Like, I personally don't want this to be shut down, but I, as a functionary of the Department of Energy, I'm going to do
Sure.
I'm going to carry out my orders. And so, unless like anything changes at the top, like this is going to go ahead and keep boring into the soul, right? We got to make a
Yep.
breakthrough. And so yeah, I think the line that we probably both remember
Yep.
out of this is as he's looking this, government official directly in the eye, he's like, "Will you walk in the footsteps of Jesus Christ?"
Yes.
In the context of Martin Luther King, the Renaissance, the American system, and everything. So it
Joan of
wasn't,
Arc. Yeah.
yeah, Joan of Arc, but it was
Yeah.
like, you know, you're on the altar of history, my dude. And
Yes. This
what are
is
you
your
gonna
shot.
do? You know, and just I appreciate your time.
Yep. I know. He was an Iceman.
Yeah,
He you could tell like he knew, but yeah, we're asking this guy to maybe give up his job, to like refuse this order,
right.
to do that. And I remember it was a partly technical issue, like that he said he tried to figure out a way. I think it was molten sodium, if I remember right. But like they were going to try to suck it from above, but they couldn't guarantee they're going to get all of it. So like storage issues, and there was the whole thing remember the Heart of America? Those are some of the liberal adversaries we had at that time who were like trying to
Okay.
shut down. There was Seattle-based liberal anti-nuclear group that we ran up against year after year, whatever. And so they were part of the Hanford cleanup, and they did some good things there, but also problematic. But anyway, so that was like sort of the counterpole. They're like, shut it all down. But
Yeah.
yeah, then I remember the technical thing being that he realized as project lead that he had to drill through the bottom to drain everything sufficiently. And that would make it inoperable. It couldn't just be
Be
mothballed.
irreversible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
irreversible. Yeah. But I remember vividly, Wes just hey,
Yeah.
whatever his name is, Tom,
Mhm.
walk in the footsteps of Christ, Tom.
Yeah.
He said, I remember after the meeting, Wes describing that as the Hail Mary. Like we had to,
Yeah.
you got to try, you got to try to do it. So,
No, I felt good about the trip. I mean, because yeah, we left it all out.
mm,
But and when I first heard back from you not too long ago, and we were just kind of kicking back and forth
mhm.
on this, um, you mentioned something very interesting, which
Yeah.
about your connection to this whole thing. So, here we are, we're kind of recruited, same cohort, this and that. You're up in Seattle, like, come, we do this trip. We're out in the field, we're, raising money, buying pizza, talking to students,
Hmm.
getting what's out, doing all this. Um, but yeah, you have this sort of direct family connection to that
Yeah.
site.
It's fun. So one funny thing first that I don't know, I like to it tickles my fancy when I remember it. I don't remember who I proposed. It might have been the office leadership. I think it was the office leadership. Maybe it was Wes. But I had the idea at the time, and it was a bad idea, but I thought a funny idea that wouldn't it be great if we could chain ourselves to this reactor?
Okay.
Just as like a play on the whole, hippie thing.
Right.
Obviously, it was shut down, probably a felony, and wouldn't have been good had we done it, but it would have been funny,
We got as
just
far as driving out to the gate and
we
taking
did
a picture.
We did
Yeah.
go to the gate. That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll post that photo here because I think we do have it still. But yeah, family connection. So this trip was in '05, and then '06, we're down. You and I were both down at the California Democratic Convention in Sacramento in 2006. I want to say it was in the spring or summer, maybe April or something.
Mhm.
So my grandpa, who I knew he was in nuclear, like he worked for Siemens for a long time, but to me, mostly as a kid, he was just this farmer who, like, we had this farm in Tri-Cities, right? He had this
Mhm.
farm outside Benton City and grew up like working on it during summers and stuff. But then he meets up with us in Sacramento just for lunch, and he's like, and I know he's a big nuclear guy. So I'm like, oh, we just did this campaign last year. We tried to save the FFTF, and he goes, oh, that's funny. Like, I helped design that.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to that? So he was just a funny, like, small world. I did not know at the time when we were doing it, and I don't think, I mean, yeah, maybe Dave or Wes, they probably don't know either, but still kind of funny, funny
Yeah.
small world, small world.
Yeah. So yeah, whatever. Maybe it's there's some fractal pattern just trying to, work itself out.
Sure. Yeah, probably.
So yeah, maybe your kid will revive it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, her name means torch, so maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
In what language?
Greek.
Wow. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so, um, do you want to talk more about the rest of your experience?
Um, I just want to say, it was I think that experience being in Seattle, it was it was a good time. It was a good time.
Hmm.
It was it was interesting to I felt like the local that you guys had built was it was really unique. Uh it had this I think maybe the reputation at the time was you guys were sort of the more militant
Yep.
group, and but it was a very welcoming militancy. It's
Yeah.
coming in, sort of dropping in from the outside. At a personal level, it was very welcoming.
Hmm.
I remember you in particular, yeah, did a lot to sort of keep the morale of the office up and light.
Hmm.
It was important. Um, so, there any one of these things, any one of these experiences could sort of we could keep unpacking and imagine what it meant, but at the very least, like cheers to you for 20th anniversary of a fun trip.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think that sort of encapsulates a lot of what we were trying to do as a youth movement, you know.
Hmm.
And in my memory, it does sort of stand as a good example of trying to bridge like politically bridge these two cultures. Like if there was anything that the youth movement in general, stood for, worked on, it was a sort of directly addressing this two cultures paradox generally, or two cultures division about science, technology, um, art, history, this
Hmm.
classical problem that other people had written and talked about,
Hmm.
and making what, at least inside of the terms of the movement, felt like a really good faith effort to try to bridge that with our own program, singing and classical art, history of science, doing
Hmm.
pedagogical work, trying to recreate certain discoveries. Yeah, so like at a political level, this is probably a relatively clean and isolated example of trying to do that, right? Where
Hmm.
you have this extreme in Washington, the uber green left coast and the far right east coast, and
Hmm.
sort of trying to mix it up,
Yeah.
use one campaign to kind of bring together those various threads of American history as we saw it and understood it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think that there's so much more
Sure. Sure.
in the
Sure.
movement to discuss and unpack, and I would say it's surprising to me, being 12 years out or 13 years out now.
Mhm.
The salience of a lot of it is still fresh, and in some respects getting more important for me to think about, and it hasn't proceeded linearly, where it was like, well, 1 year out everything's fresh and raw, and 2 years out it gets a little more attenuated. And
Hmm.
that's true insofar as, coming out of an experience like that, you just need to establish yourself and make a new life and reintegrate into other structures in society. But um, I still think that the formative influence of that time, this 2003, 4, or 5, all the way up through whatever it was that people left, um,
Hmm.
is something that I'm like actively working through. I
Hmm.
don't, I don't, I can't turn away from it in that sense. And I'm grateful for the experience.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So, and I'm
Yeah.
also, yeah. So I think it's a good project what you're doing, to sort of collate these different views of it, and um, let us all try to process things in real time together.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. One thing I've brought up a little bit on previous shows, but I have a lot more, I would say, private support and discussions than necessarily makes it to public shows kind of thing. And a lot of what I hear, a lot of people for all kinds of very solid reasons, don't want to be public with their views. Fair enough, because it's a complex, nuanced process and emotion, so I get it. But a common thing I hear is like, oh, thank you so much for doing this, but also, I'm so glad this person said this because that's exactly how I felt. And I
Hmm.
didn't know anyone else felt that way. I'm like, yeah, like that's, once you start to just have those discussions, you realize, yes, they have the same experience as you, and like maybe you're isolated. A lot of people had difficulty processing it. Like there's such a depth of experience, right? Some people had awful experiences, some people had more positive, et cetera. And so there's such a gradient.
Hmm.
But just having that connection and helping people process that it was not just them or like one of my favorite episodes is the second one with Chance. It's called Hero in a Tragic Land.
Okay.
Because I think it's just my running hypothesis, and I try to just be here for guests and let them express it, but I also, I don't know, at a certain point want to put a little bit of my thesis out there. But it's like this story is a good example of it, right? Where it's a great story. Like I think we were doing the right thing. It made sense. It was a rational thing we were trying to accomplish. It wasn't accomplished, right? We're doing this sort of heroic thing where we're going out, we're crossing the threshold, we're like putting ourselves out there, we're fighting, we're trying to restore order to the kingdom in a way, right? But in a lot of ways, the whole land has got a certain element of tragedy, and part of that's like the organization had that. I think most people that would come on the show ended up leaving. Show's open to people that are currently doing it, but because they were there with us too, right? And they have a different experience and they're still motivated to do it, whatever. And that's fine. That's good for them, right? No judgment. But yeah, it's such a diverse set of experiences. And but yeah, it is a good this story, a good little encapsulation, just a good little microcosm of the kinds of things we were doing. Because it was a noble thing. It was fun. Like I'm still very proud of it. It was cool. Like it was fun. We were out there doing that. We had some laughs. You guys interacting with my old friends from high school is just a very funny meeting of worlds,
Yeah.
you know.
No, I
But
mean, and yeah, I mean, honestly, at some level, I was also conflicted because I was like, these guys throw a good party. Like, I kind of want to get into it, but
yeah, yeah,
gotta keep it
yeah.
squared away. But I mean, I'm kind of curious, and maybe you'll choose your own time and place to discuss it. But having after the movement gone into the military,
Hmm.
um, and doing it, there's a few other I think members that have done that too, and
Hmm.
that's I'm curious if like if you partly you're also, as I understand what you're doing is somewhat a continuation of that, but in a contracting and a private role. So
Hmm.
maybe it's still active and current, but
Hmm.
have you had a chance to kind of reflect on your experience in the military, which at some level would have overlapped with GWAT and all that? Like,
Sure. Yeah, yeah, somewhat. I'm still in the reserve, so like I was at a military thing this morning. Yeah, and I'm a senior enlisted person, so kind of like work my way up the ranks. And yeah, military was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of like those questions for me, like the ikigai concept, like the six
Mhm.
aspects of fulfillment. For me, like service is a big part of that, like having my work having value, right? And so the movement provided like high levels of that for a really long time until it didn't, right? But then so trying to find that. So the military was somewhat of a natural choice for me from that respect. It's like, okay, I'm still at least doing something to defend our country in that way. So I wasn't going to work for some other political group. I just could care less. So yeah, it was good for that. And yeah, I've had a lot of thoughts about it. I did 8 years active, and I've just been for about a year and a few months in the reserve. So it's been neat, and it is sort of something I do talk to people about, like, how did you decide to go back, or like, what was it like for you? I mean, when we're used to putting in 18-hour days, 6 days a week of work for something we believe in, now like 9 to 5 is like nothing. I think for a lot of people,
Yeah.
so
Well, it sort of depends though if the motivation part isn't there, right? Like,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and then that question of and that's can be like a very deeply layered question of what is your identity now that that thing is no longer there,
Mm-hmm.
you know? I recommended to several people to read the autobiography of Malcolm X, kind of for that reason, because he goes through so many different changes, right? And for a while it was him being a street criminal, and then it's him being a Nation of Islam leading figure, and then he's realizing that doesn't work. Then it's him being his own thing, trying to create his own um, Islamic, group, whatever. But yeah, like how much of our identities were tied into these things, right? I think a lot of people were more so, and I think a lot of people, the people that had more trouble with it from people I've talked to, it's just that feeling of like, if I can't do this, what does that say about me? Because some
Mm-hmm.
people were kicked out, some people were forced out, some people just couldn't. couldn't handle it. Some people, a lot. I talked about it in early episodes, but there's that binary of like you're in or nothing, right? And there's this Islamic view of like if you're a contact, you're neutral because you don't know. But then once you're in, you're golden soul and you're great. But then once you leave, you're an apostate and you're worse than the devil. That's like we had that view in so many ways. So,
Mhm.
never like explicit, but it was like de facto view, I think. And people knew that. And I compared it in the military, like if we have someone leave our division, our unit, we throw them a going away. Like, hey man, it was great. It was great to have you. You contributed to our team. And the movement is like, screw you. Hope we never see you again.
Mhm.
Don't contact us. Like, and so if you're in at that time and maybe you're having questions and you see the way that person was treated, that really then that just makes the barrier that much higher. And then once you're gonna jump over, then it's like, okay, you're dead to the world. And then your friends don't understand what your experience was. Your family doesn't understand. You can't talk to the people in the movement. You've been disconnected with people that left earlier, and like maybe you are still in touch with them somehow, but
Mhm.
it's almost by design.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's yeah, like is your identity was your identity just because you were doing these things, or was it because you're a good person and this was like a vehicle to do those things, you know? And then
Mhm.
like just because you can't do it anymore, are you still good? So it's like it's a complex question, but I say that with a view to the people that have reached out that have had more difficulty processing their emotions and everything from this kind of thing. So that's why like I'm thankful to you for coming on and sharing your experiences as well, because it all just builds up. And one person was not comfortable coming on, but they wrote a poem. Um, it was on one of the Chance episodes, and Chance and I like discussed the poem. And to that person, it meant a ton to just hear that poem spoken into existence. So it's like
Yeah.
great for that. So that's partially why I'm doing the written project as well. To just be another outlet. People want to just, hey, give me your experience, and um, let's process this stuff. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, we did, it's difficult sometimes to entangle just the effect of being young and the solidarity and the kind of camaraderie of that time in life, depending on, you could be doing any number of things, but um, this project to explicitly, create an alternative culture and have some kind of coherence, internal coherence of that culture and to practice it and um, to sing together, you know, um, those sort of set charges, like psychological, emotional, spiritual charges that in a certain way, on certain levels are sort of a slow burn that I am metabolizing, and have been over the time since then.
mhm,
And I think the thing that is probably most memorable as a kind of generalization of that whole experience is just the kind of unquestioning purpose, you know, um, and mission, shared mission.
mhm,
So um, probably that, we modeled ourselves on in a lot of different ways. Part of it was a sort of military Auftragstaktik,
yep,
Monge Brigade, deploying squads sort of mentality, maybe
mhm,
partially just to make us feel um, cooler about about it, but and actually experimenting with some of those structures. So, um, but then to try to take that and actually move into the institutions or move into areas of, I don't know, uh, national defense in your case, is you could just see that as good training for whatever came after,
sure,
it's not always easy to articulate exactly what the experience gave or what you might have given up for it,
mhm,
but it doesn't seem to have gotten less relevant. I guess it's sort of back to this feeling that I have that yeah,
mhm,
I think now is a good time. I think
mhm,
it's a good time to try to be um, to try to understand both our personal experiences, but also, what if we can understand anything about the broader like impact, if any, the
Hmm.
broader like what influences, I think, good and probably or toxic and healthy that we may have had on other political movements and ideas,
Hmm.
space for different ideas, or just creating you know I think there was probably maybe too heavy an emphasis on the polemical side of politics, so that,
Sure.
sometimes
Sure.
it works if you got a sign about STDs and people come up to your table, but
Yeah.
sometimes you're just insulting people.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
you can see those currents now, like looking at where the country is politically, like it's hard for me not to avoid thinking like, well, to what degree did, we influence these various threads that you might see popping up
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
But unlike back then, like my feeling right now is I have no idea where things are. They seem actually objectively much more unstable
Hmm.
than it was then. So at a baseline, it seems good for, yeah, for people to just come out with their experience and let it all get sorted out, right? Who's to say? It's so mixed up, um, kind of culturally and politically right now. It's AI on the horizon, all of this stuff. It feels even more existential than 9/11, in a certain level.
Yes. I think on the George Rogers episode, we had a written contribution from someone that just wanted to write something, but they made a point about the mustache as this one, maybe one of those examples of something that really kind of radicalized political discourse at the time. And I think there's some truth to that for sure.
Yeah,
I think about just the potential for young people to just be more possessed by like ideology. And I think it's useful for things like this because it like I can tell you I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to think that you're doing this thing and it trumps any other considerations of society or relationships or whatever because you think you're saving the world. And there's a good side and a bad side to that. There's a sacrifice is one thing and then deep ideologies can be another, So yeah, I think there's a lot of relevance too. So it is good. I agree with you. I think it's probably now more relevant than ever for us as individuals, and then what we can contribute to the larger discussion of these kinds of groups, or just what it's like to be a young person trying to figure out how to operate in the world, because
yeah,
I don't know, being around young people in my different career fields, it's a little bit different than when we grew up. It's just a different time. They have a different view of what's possible for them and what's even possible for like a living standard and all that. So it's
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, if anything, I'm probably more drawn to the idea that we just ideology itself is unhelpful, and or maybe was necessary. All of these things, like, you can you look at your own experience. We can say, like, that all of these things were necessary to bring us to the place that we are today.
sure.
Also, depending on your view of things, there was no other choice. That's just, we're the product of our environment and inheritance, and so what happened is just what happened, and it is what it is. But sort of generalizing, like, to your point about, you can understand if people get captured by different ideologies or ways of thinking, and to be maybe a little less judgmental because we know how that happens.
Yep.
And maybe if there's any lesson to draw from that, it's like, yeah, ideology is not where it is. It's not trying to find the right ideology. It's at some
Hmm.
level, it's something else. It starts with your personal experience, but it you can uh, ideology brings with it all kinds of commitments that aren't based on your personal experience and your personal knowledge, and that's where you start to try to compensate and cover over and fill in,
Hmm.
That's just maybe what you have to do when you're 19 and 20 and trying to put it together. But, you know, at a certain point, you have to sort of trust other um, other experiences. And
Hmm.
so, so yeah, I mean, I guess all of which is to say, I don't really have anything else today to talk about.
Okay. All right.
um,
Nice.
because because we could plummet
Sure.
forever. Maybe we can do that at some point, but
Would love to. Open invitation.
yeah.
Yeah, would love to. That's great.
Yeah,
No,
thank you.
this has been really nice. It is still like one of my favorite stories and favorite campaigns we did. And funny because like I don't think a lot of people even knew about it. Like, it was in 21st century and I'm sure it was like in the briefing to some degree and we would like tell people about it, but like I'm sure a lot of people that were in even at the time didn't really realize how fun it was and just kind of the potential it had because it's maybe this little blip,
Yeah,
but it was meaningful and it was something we tried and something that was rewarding in its own way. And yeah, well, I'll have Wes seared on my head that memory forever with the Wendy's.
yeah. No, I mean it's a good example of what you can do with four very committed operatives, uh,
Hmm.
backed up by a phone team and a massive literature, but
Hmm.
just raising money, paying gas, eating tacos, and talking about uh, you know the necessity for a cultural renaissance. Like it's a good combo.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
So maybe someday we'll get a chance to reprise that. And I feel like uh, probably everybody who's left has had the thought that, you know, give me one more crack at a card table. I think I might have some things figured out now that I didn't know back then.
A mutual friend of ours who credits you with recruiting her, she shared some stuff with me recently about like the potential cuts to NASA,
Mhm.
and we were just joking like, should we get out a leaflet? Should- should-
Yeah, that muscle memory is still there.
I know, should we you have the newsprint stain like on your pockets, you know?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, nice. Well, yeah, it seems like maybe a good place to close.
Okay.
Yeah, and definitely you're more than welcome to come back. Would love it if you ever want to. Thank you very much for sharing your take, and it's been great to just remember those things and remember, you know, to appreciate and have gratitude for the things we did and the things we strove for at the time, I think.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
Thanks, Spencer.
yeah, all right. Well, I'll see you around.
Good luck.
Thanks.